On October 15th, something impossible happened behind the Sunday. 3 unidentified objects appeared alongside the interstellar comet 3 Atlas. They were not supposed to be there. For weeks, the sun had been unnaturally quiet. The moment these 3 objects crossed its path, the sun woke up with a violence that shocked everyone. It erupted not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. Everything was captured on camera. The objects moved with unnatural, absolute precision. Their movement was far too perfect to be dismissed as random chance. And yet, there was complete silence. There was no front-page headline, no official explanation, and certainly no press conference. This is exactly the kind of institutional silence you get when there is a deliberate cover-up. Maybe the people in power hoped that the world wouldn't notice. They were wrong. Tonight we journey through the forbidden data, the images and numbers the major institutions won't discuss. What we uncover at the end will give you a glimpse of the most dangerous, most existential secret in astronomy right now. Let's start with the most compelling evidence, the impossible clip itself. Imagine sitting down on an ordinary afternoon watching the live feed from the SOHO satellite. The sun is on your screen, a peaceful golden sphere suspended in the digital dark. Then the perspective shifts. 3 dark, unidentified masses moving at high velocity glide across the frame in rapid coordinated succession. Immediately after each one passes, a colossal eruption tears off the sun's surface. This massive star had been unusually calm, subdued as if it was sleeping. The moment these objects cross the line, it is shocked awake violently, as though hit by an electric charge. This isn't speculation or a creative interpretation. This phenomenon was documented by an amateur astronomer named Thiago, who operates online under the name Dobsonian Power. He recorded the official data and shared it with the entire world. His footage shattered all comfortable assumptions about what is even possible in our solar system. The images are official data streams from LASCO, the large-angle and spectrometric coronagraph instruments aboard the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory. SOHO is the satellite that has been watching the sun continuously for 3 decades. These are the exact images that NASA scientists review every single day. What Thiago observed was a phenomenon that simply should not be possible according to our current understanding of solar physics and orbital mechanics. The 3 dark masses were moving in a disciplined formation. They were clearly not random debris tumbling toward our star. Their precise trajectory suggested a distinct intention. Their perfect timing suggested deep, unmistakable coordination. Thiago referred to them as companions, or dark stuff following 3 Atlas, the interstellar object that arrived from beyond our solar system. When his findings were posted, the global online astronomy community erupted instantly. Here is where the story truly becomes uncomfortable for mainstream science. The statistical probability of 3 independent random objects sequentially triggering 3 distinct solar events is ridiculously small. If you tried to calculate that probability using conventional mathematics, you'd get laughed out of the room. This is not merely an unlikely event. This is the kind of event that forces you to stop and seriously reconsider whether something else, something far stranger, is happening just beneath the surface. 3 mysterious objects, 3 powerful explosions. The pattern is too clean to ignore. The timing is too perfect to be coincidence. Any field that deals with complex data teaches you one core lesson: patterns like this do not occur by accident. They happen because something or someone is driving them. Yet, the powerful silence continued. The institutional silence following the documented solar events was not merely an absence of noise. It quickly became its own deafening statement. There was no formal press conference from NASA. There was no definitive statement from the European Space Agency. There was 0 official acknowledgement from any major research institution or space agency anywhere in the world. The organizations we task with, understanding the fundamental nature of our solar system, simply refused to respond to the evidence. In the modern world, every major scientific discovery is immediately amplified and celebrated. The detection of a distant exoplanet or a gravitational wave generates instant global headlines. Yet the images of these 3 precision-moving objects and the resulting solar events pass through every official channel and encountered what can only be accurately described as complete institutional radio silence. This absence of commentary is deeply significant. It is the silence that raises the most critical questions. Why would the powerful organizations that see everything the sun does, the ones that employ thousands of highly educated scientists, remain completely quiet about an event that directly contradicts our most fundamental understanding of what is possible in near-solar space? They employ the best minds in the world, yet they refuse to discuss a phenomenon that shatters the models their entire careers are built on. The silence suggests that the problem is not a lack of data. The problem is the implications of the data itself. It's the kind of quiet that suggests either profound confusion or deliberate calculated concealment. Independent observers quickly corroborated the findings. Skywatchers operating on X, specifically those named Night Monkey and Tobazil, both seasoned in identifying unusual celestial phenomena, reported seeing fast-moving points of light. Their observations captured near Gemini and in other all-sky surveys aligned perfectly with Thiago's timeline. This is crucial. We had multiple independent sources, all using completely different equipment, all from different vantage points, yet all reporting the exact same phenomenon within the same small window of time. When a single person reports something unusual, scientists catalogue it as an anomaly or curiosity. When 5 different people independently report the same thing, you have genuine, powerful corroboration. When institutions actively ignore that strong corroboration, you have to ask one simple question: what are they genuinely afraid of? The motives driving this silence are not hard to grasp. Imagine the consequences of confirming the discovery of artificial objects in near-solar space. Such a discovery would instantly demand a complete terrifying restructuring of how humanity understands its entire place in the universe. This would transform overnight from a fascinating scientific curiosity into a devastating geopolitical, military, and existential crisis. Governments are simply not prepared to answer the fundamental questions this raises. There is a powerful, undeniable safety in maintaining silence. There is protection in simply pretending that nothing significant has happened. But silence never truly solves a problem. It only creates a deep, dangerous vacuum. That vacuum is immediately filled by speculation, by conspiracy theories, and by an inevitable flood of genuine misinformation. The smarter, and certainly the more honest approach, would be to acknowledge the confirmed observations and launch an open investigation immediately. Instead, we are left to grapple with the single most important question that the official scientific community refuses even to ask. Could this impossible event, this perfectly timed triple eruption, actually be the first publicly recorded kinetic intervention in solar physics? Could we, the ordinary public, be watching in real time what is effectively humanity's first documented contact with non-human intelligence? These are the core questions that truly keep researchers and observers awake at night. The entire mystery begins with 3 dark objects and 3 colossal explosions that absolutely no one in a position of power is willing to discuss. The facts demand we move past the silence and examine the hard data. Probability is a powerful, uncompromising mirror. When you hold that mirror up to the entire sequence of events surrounding 3 Atlas and its companions, one thing becomes instantly and brutally apparent. If this entire sequence, 3 separate objects entering near solar space, each independently and sequentially triggering colossal solar eruptions, were purely random, purely a set of cosmic coincidences, the mathematical odds would be staggering. You would be looking at odds roughly equivalent to shuffling a deck of cards and then drawing the exact ace of spades 500 times in a row. It is technically not impossible, of course, but it is so profoundly statistically unlikely that anyone suggesting it happened by random chance is making a statement of either deep denial or profound willful ignorance. The human brain is fundamentally wired to recognize patterns. This is not a quirk. It is the core mechanism that allowed our species to survive and thrive. A subtle pattern in the grass that indicates potential prey or predator grabs our immediate attention. A repeating pattern in any form of data demands our immediate rigorous investigation. 3 colossal explosions following the passage of 3 distinct objects is not mere background noise. It is a powerful, compelling, unambiguous signal. But here is the exact point where institutional science often pulls back and instantly retreats into a position of intellectual defensiveness. Scientists are quick to remind you that correlation is not causation. They insist that all extraordinary claims require an equally extraordinary level of evidence. They preach the absolute necessity of maintaining a healthy professional skepticism. All of this is fundamentally true, and all of it is genuinely important for the scientific process. But that healthy skepticism quickly transforms into something pathological when it insists on aggressively ignoring powerful evidence that fundamentally challenges our existing comfortable models. When the powerful institutions of science reject undeniable data simply because it directly conflicts with what we thought we knew, and we are no longer behaving scientifically, we are engaging in dogma. We are no longer serving the ultimate goal of truth. We are merely protecting the comforting structure of our existing theories. This tendency has been specifically warned about by physicists with decades of impeccable credibility. Sabine Hosenfelder, a highly respected physicist, has publicly stated that rejecting the very possibility of an artificial origin without a full rigorous investigation would be nothing less than the single biggest mistake our civilization could ever make. Not just a mistake, but the one that matters most for our future. The precise timeline of these confirmed events is therefore absolutely crucial. Let us walk through the sequence one more time carefully without the institutional filters. The sun had been unusually subdued, quiet for weeks leading up to the entire observation period. The solar activity was negligible, as though the star itself was simply sleeping. Then 3 Atlas approached, bringing its 3 enigmatic companion objects. The exact moment they passed near the solar surface, the massive star violently awakened. The 3 eruptions came in rapid-fire succession like an almost instantaneous cascade of responses. The sun seemed to be actively reacting to something external. It was either defending itself against a powerful threat, or perhaps it was being deliberately and precisely triggered by something technologically sophisticated. We can find crucial instruction in historical parallels. When United States military forces first encountered and started documenting the problem of unexplained aerial phenomena in the 1940s and 50s, they did not immediately declassify everything they found. Instead of releasing the information, they did the exact opposite. They classified it heavily, they compartmentalized the data into distinct, secure channels, and they maintained an aggressive institutional silence while they investigated the problem privately. We now know, thanks to recent declassifications, that various government agencies and military branches were continuously tracking genuinely anomalous objects and events for over 7 decades. Yet they told the public essentially nothing. The secrecy lasted 70 years. Why would they choose to behave any differently right now in the face of an interstellar phenomenon with far greater implications? Independent confirmations of the anomalous object behavior continued to pour in. Night Monkey documented fast-moving signatures across a multitude of all-sky surveys. Tobazil tracked multiple objects that displayed complex motion, completely inconsistent with the standard behavior of comets or the patterns of orbital debris. Furthermore, a growing network of amateur astronomers, working meticulously with publicly available data from SOHO and other solar observation platforms, identified additional anomalies. The entire mainstream astronomy community has consistently refused to address these new findings. This is far beyond a single observer making outlandish wild claims. This is a rapidly growing independent body of documented evidence that is pointing towards something real, something definitively measurable, a phenomenon that exists clearly in our data but has still not been integrated into the official narrative about what is actually happening in near-solar space. The closer any honest observer examines the hard facts, the more completely impossible the institutional silence becomes to rationally justify. Yet the counter-argument, the one favoured by establishment scientists, does deserve genuine objective respect. Space agencies are legitimately trained to wait for absolute verifiable confirmation before they make any public statements. They face immense and legitimate pressure to ensure that anomalies are 100% genuine before broadcasting them to the entire world. The risk of crying wolf, the danger of announcing a massive discovery that turns out to be nothing more than an instrumental artifact or a simple misinterpretation of complex data, is a serious and palpable fear for them. Scientific credibility is something that is earned incredibly slowly over generations, but it can be lost instantly and catastrophically. Rushing to premature conclusions, even in the face of a profoundly compelling pattern, risks undermining the authority of the very institutions we rely on to deliver critical information about our solar system and the world. This presents the fundamental genuine tension at the core of the matter. On one side of the argument, you have institutional caution, rigorous verification, and the foundational scientific method. On the other side, you have the powerful demand for absolute transparency and the public's right to information about events that may have literally profound implications for the human species. Both of these values absolutely matter. Both create entirely legitimate demands on the institutions. Neither one can be completely satisfied without compromising the other. But there is one thing that we absolutely cannot allow, and it is precisely what seems to be happening right now. We cannot simply pretend that these profound anomalies do not exist. We cannot dismiss every single independent observation solely because it makes the establishment uncomfortable. We cannot continue to maintain an active silence while powerful accumulating evidence piles up. Silence maintained for this long eventually stops being mere prudence. It transitions into complicity. It becomes a deliberate conscious choice. It is institutional corruption, cleverly masked as scientific caution. The pattern is undeniably real. 3 dark objects, 3 colossal explosions, 3 independent observers, documenting the same thing within the same time frame. The evidence is not subtle or equivocal. It is openly visible right there in our own data, waiting for just one person in power to simply acknowledge that it is real. When we move past the question of timing, correlation, and institutional silence, the mystery of 3E Atlas deepens into something far stranger and more compelling. We must now examine the data related to polarization and what that phenomenon tells us about the core composition and ultimate origin of the interstellar object itself. Light travels through space as an electromagnetic wave. Like any wave, it oscillates. In most normal simple circumstances, that oscillation happens simultaneously in every direction, perpendicular to the direction of its travel. Think of a stone dropped into perfectly still water, creating ripples that spread out evenly in every direction. But when that light encounters complex surfaces such as ice crystals or dust particles, something absolutely remarkable happens. The wave's oscillation becomes intensely organized. It begins to oscillate preferentially in only one direction, or perhaps a few distinct directions. This fundamental process is what scientists call polarization. The degree and pattern of light polarization is extraordinarily sensitive. It acts like an ultimate lie detector, revealing the precise physical properties of whatever the light has either passed through or bounced off. Scientists have relied on this polarization analysis for decades to accurately understand comets. They possess an extensive catalogue of exactly what specific polarization patterns to expect from various types of common dust particles. They know, for instance, precisely how ice grains polarize light differently from silicate minerals. They have built up a massive catalogue of confirmed normal responses. This is the scientific baseline of exactly how an ordinary comet is supposed to behave when intense sunlight passes through its dusty envelope and then reflects back toward our Earth. 3E Atlas completely and violently violates this established baseline. Its light signature is so profoundly anomalous that the original researchers who meticulously analyzed it felt compelled to publish their findings under headlines that simply screamed with deep concern and massive scientific uncertainty. A scientific paper by Gray and colleagues documents an extreme negative polarization in 3E Atlas. The values reached were an astounding -2.7%. This is on a curve where the vast majority of all known comets cluster tightly between 0 and 2%. This is far beyond a minor deviation or a simple fluctuation within normal variation. This is a polarization pattern so unusual and so contradictory that all existing models of ice and dust behavior in comets violently struggle to explain it. The entire optical signature, the total light pattern, points definitively toward an object whose physical composition should not be possible. If 3E Atlas were a perfectly normal comet, simply composed of ordinary dust and ice, the situation would be analogous to trying to identify a human being by their fingerprint. The provided fingerprint does not match a single database. It does not conform to any known human type. The ridges literally flow in the wrong directions. The entire pattern does not conform to human anatomy. When confronted with this scenario, you would be instantly forced to suspect one of two things. Either the fingerprint has been deliberately fabricated, or you are looking at someone whose fundamental biology is different from the human norm. This is the unsettling information the polarization data is giving us. Either 3E Atlas possesses a surface composed of exotic materials we rarely if ever observe in our solar system, or its entire texture and core structure are completely unlike anything we have ever catalogued before. The necessary and immediate speculation follows from the polarization paradox. If the surface is not composed of ordinary expected dust, then what exactly is it made of? The possibilities range from merely exotic ices to intentionally engineered materials. We must consider the possibility of a surface that has been specifically designed to possess unique reflective properties. The mainstream scientific response to this has been to propose what researchers are now calling a dust-poor, gas-poor comet model. This suggests a natural explanation that 3E Atlas is composed almost entirely of solid material with very little gaseous component. Under this model, the dust itself would be substantially larger and denser than the dust found in a typical regular comet. The dust-poor model would potentially suppress the standard spectral signatures that we normally associate with comets. It could explain some of the most striking polarization anomalies. This would be achieved not through exotic chemistry, but simply through the sheer size and density of the particles rather than through their core chemical composition. This is certainly a scientifically sound, entirely reasonable hypothesis. It is also one that conveniently avoids challenging the existing comfortable cosmology. It successfully keeps 3E Atlas contained firmly within the category of an unusual, but ultimately natural cosmic phenomenon. However, one prominent astrophysicist, Avi Loeb, who has consistently shown a willingness to consider the possibility of artificial origins, has publicly weighed in on this debate. He assigns this comforting natural explanation a likelihood of only about 4 out of 10. This means that he simultaneously assigns the alternative hypothesis something more deliberate, something more exotic, something more technologically advanced, a likelihood of 6 out of 10, or potentially even higher. When you hear those numbers from a scientist of Loeb's standing, you must pause and reflect. A credible scientist is not saying that he definitively believes in aliens. He is not claiming absolute certainty or making an extraordinary unsupported statement. Instead, he is stating something far more profound, that the confirmed anomalies are so profound, so severe, and so completely contrary to all prior expectations that the conventional natural explanation is actually the minority position. It is only the majority position among those experts who refuse to fully and honestly engage with the actual data. This alarming pattern is repeating across virtually every single layer of analysis we perform. The raw data points powerfully towards something else entirely. The old models are strained almost to their breaking point, simply trying to contain the new evidence. The institutions double down and aggressively maintain their silence. All the while, the light from 3E Atlas bends in ways we simply do not fully understand. It is revealing a structure or a surface that simply does not fit any of our established categories. What the polarization analysis shows us is a concrete physical property of 3E Atlas that directly contradicts our most basic assumptions. But the genuine smoking gun, the single piece of evidence that truly makes establishment scientists the most uncomfortable, lies not in how the light bends around the object, it lies in the precise elements that compose the object itself. We need to look closely at the spectrum, at the distinct chemical fingerprints that 3E Atlas is continuously broadcasting into the dark void of space. The truth is written in the atoms. Spectroscopy is the ultimate form of cosmic forensics. When light either passes through or bounces off matter, every single chemical element, leaves behind a distinct signature. It is like a precise, indelible fingerprint burned directly into the light spectrum. The element nickel creates one specific line. Iron creates another completely different line. Cyanide creates yet another specific signature. Scientists have painstakingly catalogued every single one of these signatures for every known element in the universe. By looking at a spectrum, they can determine exactly what is out there, precisely how much of it exists, and how it is physically distributed. When the powerful KEK Observatory, one of the most capable telescopes on our planet, pointed directly at 3E Atlas and captured its light spectrum, something utterly unprecedented appeared right there in the data. They detected unmistakable nickel emission lines. This by itself is not surprising at all. Nickel exists naturally in comets. But here is where the finding becomes profoundly interesting and deeply unsettling. The expected iron lines were either almost completely absent or were suppressed to an extreme unusual degree. The resulting nickel-to-iron ratio discovered in 3 Atlas is literally orders of magnitude higher than the ratio found in any comet known to humanity. This is not just unusual, it is a finding that is entirely contradictory to everything we currently believe about how solar system objects naturally form. The implications sharpen further when you consider the cyanide ratios. Cyanide emission is standard and expected in virtually all comets. It appears consistently across all different objects. But in 3 Atlas, the resulting nickel-to-cyanide ratio is utterly enormous. It is so mathematically extreme that if any researcher attempted to propose it as a natural occurrence without a vast additional explanation, the scientific peer review process would immediately reject the paper and laugh them out of the pay room. Yet the raw data is real. The KEK Observatory collected the light. Researchers have published the shocking findings. And the mainstream astronomy community has responded by doing what it does best, largely ignoring it, or simply explaining it away by referencing the convenient dust-poor model. But this is the point where the discussion must move away from cometary science and directly into the domain of industrial chemistry. And this is where the facts become genuinely unsettling. Nickel carbonyl is a specific chemical compound that has precisely one major consistent terrestrial use. It is used in specialized industrial processes, specifically in metallurgical cycles for the purpose of intensely extracting and purifying nickel on an industrial massive scale. The compound forms only when nickel is actively exposed to carbon monoxide under very specific conditions. It is not commonly found in any natural setting. It is for all intents and purposes an engineered and manufactured compound. When you discover such high isolated concentrations of nickel, unnaturally separated from its normal iron companions, when you see ratios that directly contradict natural formation, when you see a chemical combination that powerfully points toward industrial metallurgy, at that point you have a scientific responsibility to ask the obvious question: could something be intentionally and deliberately separating these elements? The immediate and logical response from the scientific critic is predictable and valid. They point out that natural nickel carbonyl pathways do in fact exist within the vast interstellar medium. Carbon monoxide is present. Nickel is certainly present. Under exactly the right cosmic conditions, the right temperatures, the right pressures, naturally occurring processes could potentially produce these specific compounds. It does not, in the strictest sense, require the intervention of a complex technology or any form of external intelligence. It requires only simple established chemistry and an immense amount of time. Avi Loeb himself acknowledges the power of this argument. He ranks the possibility of a purely artificial origin at about 4 out of 10. His number suggests that while he takes the artificial hypothesis seriously, he still maintains that natural chemical pathways remain entirely plausible explanations. This is a critical point that demands our rigor. We cannot simply see a chemical anomaly in the data and instantly leap to the conclusion of alien technology. That is not the methodology of science. That is precisely how confirmation bias operates, finding the answer you already want. Instead, we must rigorously hold multiple competing hypotheses in our minds simultaneously. Natural metal processes could definitively explain the bizarre nickel ratios, but intentional, deliberate separation and industrial-scale processing of materials could also explain the same ratios. Both potential explanations remain fully possible. Both are genuinely supported by the hard, raw data. The scientific question is therefore not whether one is absolutely true and the other is absolutely false. The question is determining which hypothesis is statistically more probable. Furthermore, we must ask what crucial additional evidence would be required to tip the balance decisively in one direction or the other. This is the exact moment where the institutional silence becomes intensely frustrating. Because the obvious immediate next step in any investigation is completely clear, we desperately need substantially more spectroscopic data. We need instruments with dramatically better resolution. We need to determine not just what elements are present in 3 Atlas, but precisely where they are physically distributed throughout the object. We need to know in what specific physical configurations they actually exist. We need to examine the crucial isotopic ratios, which can instantly tell us whether these elements were born in the interstellar medium or whether they originated from process stellar environments. We need to conduct a rigorous comparative analysis. We must check this object against every other interstellar object that has ever been observed, to see if these strange ratios ever appear anywhere else, or if 3 Atlas is truly unique. These are all entirely reasonable, non-controversial investigations. They are the exact studies that any well-funded, serious research team should be conducting right now today. Yet almost no significant resources are being directed toward them. Very few definitive papers are being published. Very few deep discussions are happening at the major powerful astronomy conferences. It is as if the entire scientific community has silently, collectively decided that the question of origin is simply not worth asking. And when a scientific community makes that collective decision, you must wonder what fundamental truth they are consciously protecting. The chemical evidence points powerfully towards something artificial, or at the very least something fundamentally anomalous. But chemistry alone can never fully settle the question. We must also look closely at the actual physical structure of 3 Atlas itself. We must examine the raw images that have been captured of its nucleus, because what is visible there opens a completely new realm of possibility and speculation. Raw, high-resolution imagery from the Gemini Observatory tells an astonishing story. This story moves far beyond the isolated data of polarization and spectroscopy, and into territory that makes scientific skeptics profoundly, fundamentally uncomfortable. The central nucleus of 3 Atlas, when meticulously examined in the absolute highest resolution images currently available, does not appear to possess the expected irregular potato-like shape that is typical of the vast majority of all comets. Instead, multiple independent observers have consistently reported seeing what they describe as a stingray-like configuration. This configuration includes strong hints of geometry and a definite structure that aggressively deviates from the expected randomness of a natural object. Some viewers, leaning heavily into the most extreme forms of speculation, have gone further. They have identified what they interpret as definite stepped pyramid, or even ziggurat formations on the surface. Now, before we proceed to analyze this powerful claim, we must be absolutely clear about the immense challenges involved in interpreting this visual data. Images captured by high-powered telescopes are invariably subject to profound pixelation. They are subject to optical distortion caused by atmospheric turbulence. They can, and often do, contain subtle artifacts resulting from the imaging process itself. Furthermore, the human brain is an intense pattern recognition machine. It has been ruthlessly trained by hundreds of thousands of years of evolution to instantly see design and intention even in places where absolutely none exists. We are hardwired to see faces in the shifting clouds. We are driven to find meaning and complex conspiracies in simple statistical noise. We desperately search for meaning in randomness. This innate tendency is not necessarily a weakness. It is in fact a crucial feature of how we have survived as a species. But it is also an extremely powerful source of potential error when that drive is aggressively applied to the cold, distant reality of astronomical data. And yet, the core question of an object's morphology, its very shape, remains critically important. A perfectly spherical asteroid would instantly indicate something highly unusual, An asteroid shaped like a mathematically perfect cube would indicate something even more unusual, a profound anomaly. Shape is not irrelevant. Shape carries absolute information. Shape can powerfully reveal the exact formation process. Crucially, shape can reveal intentional design if design is present. The debate surrounding the exact shape of 3 Atlas is not an abstract theoretical one. It is concrete and visually driven. Multiple different observers, utilizing different high-powered telescopes at different times, have independently reported distinct geometric elements that repeatedly recur in the images. These are not merely solitary, isolated reports coming from crackpots or fringe conspiracy theorists. These are independent observations being made by serious, seasoned amateurs and established professionals. These are people willing to risk their hard-earned credibility on what they sincerely believe they are witnessing. The key question is not whether these observers are lying or hallucinating. The question is whether they are interpreting ambiguous data through an aggressive lens of intense expectation and a profound desire to find anomalies. The surrounding context becomes absolutely essential when trying to determine the true significance of the nucleus's unusual shape. For instance, in early 2025, reports began to circulate about a genuinely high-level United States military meeting. This meeting was reportedly held at Quantico. It involved top-tier generals and key operators from the Naval Radio Telescope facility. The official story, to the limited extent that any story was even provided, suggested it was nothing more than a routine briefing focused on solar threats and space weather. But the timing of the meeting is profoundly suspicious. The event occurred immediately following the most intense and sustained period of public observations of 3 Atlas. Crucially, the meeting involved specialized radio telescope operators. These operators would have unique access to non-optical data about the object. This is data that is simply not available to any civilian astronomer. Furthermore, the meeting involved high-ranking executive military personnel. This level of command presence strongly suggests either an unusual and extreme level of deep concern or an unusual level of direct privileged awareness. None of these facts taken in isolation is absolute proof of anything sinister. None of this definitively confirms that the observed objects are artificial or hostile, but absolutely none of this can be rationally dismissed as mere coincidence either. It is an integral thread in the larger compelling pattern. It is yet another piece in the massive tapestry that powerfully suggests the most powerful global institutions are taking this interstellar phenomenon far more seriously than their carefully crafted public pronouncements would ever indicate. Why exactly do the geometric shapes matter so much? It is worth dwelling on this concept. In nature, the vast majority of objects are formed through completely random, chaotic processes. Gravity pulls material together almost equally from all directions, which naturally creates bodies that are roughly spherical. Solar wind sculpts out the tails of comets. Outgassing creates powerful jets. These random processes generate shapes that are often complex, but they fundamentally arise from entirely symmetrical forces. But engineered objects that have been deliberately constructed and manufactured, tend to display fundamentally different patterns. They showcase defined angles. They reveal repeating uniform geometries. They display precise configurations that have been optimized for highly specific complex purposes. They ultimately show undeniable design. When independent observers consistently report finding distinct stingray shapes and pyramid formations in the raw images of 3 Atlas, they are essentially asking one core vital question. Does this distant object display the distinct properties of an engineered structure or the chaotic properties of a naturally occurring body? The current data remains too noisy and too pixelated to definitively reach absolute certainty, but the strange geometric patterns that are being reported are far too consistent across multiple independent observers to simply be dismissed as mass hallucination. We are now in a territory where reaching the ultimate truth requires better, cleaner data. It requires higher resolution images and much closer observation. And as we move from what we can directly see to what this object might actually be doing, in a functional sense, we must face the unsettling possibility that 3 Atlas is not merely travelling alone. It clearly has companions, and they are travelling with it for a very specific operational reason. The original observation of the three dark objects that immediately preceded the colossal solar eruptions instantly invites a powerful question. This is a question that borders on science fiction until you remember that these objects are definitively real. They are documented in official SOHO data, and they directly contradict every single one of our scientific models for what is de facto possible in near-solar space. If these three objects are truly traveling with 3E Atlas deliberately, if they are operationally associated with it, or if they are in some way controlling its trajectory, then what exactly is their function? What is their ultimate purpose in approaching our star? The amateur astronomer Tiago himself speculated that they might simply be companions. He suggested they might be fulfilling some necessary function relative to the main body of 3E Atlas. But what kind of function would require such precise intentional positioning? The most immediate, obvious, and comforting interpretation is simple protection. Perhaps these are guardian objects carefully positioned to actively defend 3E Atlas from some inherent threat or danger in its necessary passage through the inner solar system. The analogy of an escort emerges naturally from this interpretation. Military convoys always deploy protective elements around their most valuable cargo. They position defensive assets to meticulously create a secure perimeter. They maintain intense, aggressive vigilance against all external threats. If a similar protective function is happening here, then this means 3E Atlas is an object of immensely valuable cargo. It is deemed important enough to desperately warrant complex protection. Important enough that whatever advanced intelligence sent it is fully willing to deploy multiple additional objects to absolutely ensure its safe passage. But this is only one potential interpretation of the hard facts. The inverse interpretation is equally plausible and dramatically more terrifying. What if these enigmatic companion objects are not guardians at all, but active attackers? What if they are deliberately positioned not to protect, but to actively destabilize the core object? What if they are actively working against 3E Atlas, attempting to either manipulate it or completely disable it as it passes through our solar system? In this profoundly dark scenario, the resulting solar eruptions are not merely an effect, they become a potent weapon. The companions would be using the colossal energy and magnetic field of the Sun itself against their primary target. They would be triggering powerful coronal mass ejections and directing their immense force with absolute terrifying precision. It is a shocking high-stakes image, but this image is no more shocking than the original idea of protective escorts. Both are genuine speculations, both are logically based on limited but compelling data, and both scenarios invite the exact same core question. Are we, the human species, watching a cosmic convoy of protection or a developing cosmic conflict? Are we witnessing the aggressive opening moves of a massive cosmic dogfight that has violently spilled into our solar system? And is the Sun itself, the grand, volatile arena, with 3E Atlas acting as either the ultimate target or the immensely valuable prize? The powerful hypothesis that the companion objects are actively triggering the solar eruptions becomes testable if we think carefully and rigorously about exactly how such a process might work. If the objects are deliberately triggering the eruptions, we would logically expect to see repeating, reinforcing patterns. We would expect the correlation to intensely strengthen as the objects continue their approach and pass the Sunday. We would expect the timing to be so precise that it would be statistically impossible to attribute to mere coincidence. It would need to show undeniable evidence of deliberate, intelligent targeting. We would also expect to see definite asymmetries in the eruptions. Perhaps the colossal eruptions would preferentially occur in the specific regions of the solar surface where the companion objects are known to be passing. Tiago has already documented some of these crucial elements. For instance, the triple cannibal coronal mass ejection that was officially forecasted for late January 2025 displayed precisely the kind of impeccable timing correlation that would be expected if external advanced objects were actively triggering the eruptions. However, 3 isolated data points, even powerful ones, do not constitute a fully conclusive pattern. We desperately need more confirmed observations. We need ample time to observe precisely how 3E Atlas behaves as it continues its high-stakes journey toward perihelion, its closest confirmed approach to the Sunday. The physical mechanism by which this triggering might occur is worth considering in detail, even if the ideas remain highly speculative. Solar magnetic reconnection is a known active process. The Sun's colossal magnetic field is constantly violently reconfiguring itself. Tensions inevitably build up. Immense energy continuously accumulates. Release events, the colossal eruptions, are absolutely inevitable. But the exact timing and the precise location of those energy releases are driven by highly complex volatile dynamics that we do not yet fully understand. We cannot reliably predict them. We certainly cannot control them, but something else might be able to. Now imagine a small external object, something with an unusual charge or an incredibly dense, unusual composition, approaching the magnetic field of the solar surface. Its very presence within the Sun's powerful magnetic field could create immense localized perturbations. It could violently alter the field topology in a confined area. These disturbances could rapidly propagate outward. They could interact with the existing accumulated tensions in the field. This perturbation could provide the absolute final trigger that converts immense potential energy into devastating kinetic energy, instantly releasing an eruption that was technically inevitable, but whose precise timing and exact location would have been completely different without the external intervention. This is not a proposal of magic. This is not technology completely beyond all human comprehension. This is merely the powerful application of advanced physics. But it would require a civilization with an extremely deep, precise knowledge of solar dynamics. It would demand millimeter-perfect navigation, and it would require the technological capability to approach the Sun itself without being instantly vaporized. Any civilization that could accomplish this would be literally centuries ahead of our own. The dedicated skeptical response to the trigger hypothesis immediately points out the immense energy budget problems. To reliably and consistently trigger colossal solar eruptions with an object significantly smaller than a major celestial body, you would theoretically need to be applying absolutely staggering amounts of energy. You would require precisely directed energy beams of overwhelming, staggering power. Or you would need a form of gravitational manipulation that goes far beyond any of our current theoretical models. You would require a level of technology so profoundly advanced that the idea of deploying it merely to trigger a few eruptions seems almost wasteful, like using a devastating thermonuclear weapon just to light a tiny candle. And yet this entire counter-argument is deeply flawed. It is speculation built upon layers of additional speculation. The truth is, we do not possess firm, definitive evidence that the solar eruptions are being triggered deliberately. We only have a compelling correlation. We have precise timing patterns. We have 3 dark objects present at the exact critical moment the powerful eruptions occur. This is not absolute proof of technological intervention. But it is precisely the singular kind of evidence that rigorously demands investigation rather than passive institutional silence. As the intense question of motive and mechanism swirls relentlessly around 3 Atlas, another deeply unsettling pattern begins to emerge. This pattern suggests that this particular comet may not be unique or alone. Multiple other green comets are currently visible in our sky, and they too are behaving in profoundly strange, unpredicted ways. The correlation between the companion objects and the eruptions is not simple proof. The statistical probability of the sequence is, as we previously established, extraordinarily low, but extraordinarily low probability is still not the same as definitive, conclusive proof of an artificial cause. The dedicated skeptic can always take the easiest path. They can retreat to the safe logical position that an intensely improbable event simply occurred and that we can never definitively rule out the possibility of random chance. This position is technically and philosophically true, but it is also a logical position that could be used to justify the dismissal of any powerful correlation, no matter how statistically precise, as nothing more than a coincidence. The most powerful scientific tool we have is a testable prediction. The testable prediction in this case is completely clear. As 3 Atlas continues its desperate approach to the Sun, we should logically observe a massive and consistent increase in solar activity. If the solar trigger hypothesis is correct, we should absolutely see eruptions that correlate directly and precisely with the passages of the companion objects. we should witness timing that is far too impeccably precise to be written off as random. If, on the contrary, we observe that the solar activity immediately returns to its normal predicted baseline levels, if we observe absolutely no discernible correlation between the passages of the companion objects and the sun's eruptions, if the entire solar system responds to 3 Atlas exactly as it would to any normal ordinary comet, then the solar trigger hypothesis completely and definitively fails. It is vulnerable to empirical observation. It is provably falsifiable. This is exactly what makes the hypothesis scientifically important and meaningful, but the shift from simply exploring the solar trigger to considering the broader existential implications requires us to fully consider the human and institutional dimension. We must rigorously examine why these crucial questions are being forcefully asked by mere amateur astronomers and outsider researchers, while the powerful establishment maintains a deep calculated distance. In the months immediately following the arrival of 3 Atlas, and the period during which it began displaying its catalogue of anomalies, other comets also arrived in our skies. These were not distant random visitors. They were nearby enough to be clearly visible to observers using simple binoculars or even the naked eye. They all glowed with the signature green hue. This distinct colour is caused by diatomic carbon molecules in their respective comas, the illuminated cloud of gas that surrounds the nucleus. Comet C, 2025, A6 Lemon, arrived from the vast outer solar system. Comet C, 2025R, 2 Swan began its long approach. Comet C, 2025 K1 Atlas, which shares the namesake of the automated telescope system, also joined the party. These other comets are essentially the forgotten non-anomalous cousins of 3 Atlas, and they have all attracted only minimal attention despite their close proximity to Earth and their clear visibility to the casual observer. The astronomy media coverage for these objects has been exceptionally sparse. The mainstream scientific discussion has been virtually non-existent. When you perform a comparative analysis between the reporting on these nearby comets and the intense, focused reporting on 3 Atlas, an interesting, deeply revealing pattern instantly emerges. The focus of the entire community visibly narrows, resources are aggressively concentrated. All attention congregates almost exclusively around the object that is most overtly anomalous. 3 Atlas leaving all the other objects in the shadow of institutional neglect. This could be dismissed as perfectly natural scientific triage. 3 Atlas is undeniably the most anomalous object. Therefore, it naturally receives the largest share of attention. Scientists operate with limited time, limited research funding, and constrained resources. They must rigorously prioritize their efforts. It makes perfect logical sense to study the single most compelling case. But here is precisely what makes the aggressive silence about the other green comets so profoundly interesting. Some of them are demonstrably displaying their own profound, odd behaviors. Some are exhibiting unexpected emission lines in their spectra. Some are showing anomalous, unpredictable brightness variations. A few are even displaying tail orientations that simply do not align with our current solar wind pressure models. None of these observations are in isolation definitively anomalous. None of them constitute unambiguous concrete evidence of a non-natural origin, but taken together, observed across multiple objects that are all arriving simultaneously from interstellar space, the pattern strongly suggests something is absolutely worth investigating. Are these objects merely a naturally more exotic, rare cohort of unusual celestial visitors? Are we simply seeing a rare group of unusual but perfectly natural objects? Or are these other comets serving a function? Are they decoys? Are they accompanying smaller probes? Are they all part of a single coordinated fleet that is following a deliberate planned itinerary? The dilemma of institutional suppression versus highly selective science becomes highly relevant here. In almost every field, some topics instantly attract massive funding and intense attention, while other equally important topics languish in obscurity. This is partially meritocratic. The most compelling questions are naturally investigated, but it is also deeply political. The crucial questions that violently challenge existing comfortable paradigms. The facts that make the powerful establishment uncomfortable. The ideas that have profound disruptive implications for how we understand the world. These topics often do not receive the attention they desperately deserve. Instead, they receive institutional silence. Institutions, like all complex, powerful organisms, develop powerful immune systems. They create an aggressive set of antibodies that immediately attack any foreign object or idea that fundamentally threatens their deeply held core assumptions. When powerful confirmed data arrives that directly contradicts those foundational assumptions, the immune response violently kicks in. The comparative analysis that desperately needs to be performed is simple and straightforward. We need to definitively examine whether any of the other green comets show the same extreme negative polarization seen in 3E Atlas. We need to urgently search for anomalous chemical ratios in their respective spectra. We need to check their physical morphology meticulously against our established models of natural comet shapes. We need to search for the presence of companion objects in all high-resolution imagery. We need to accurately correlate their respective approaches with any corresponding solar activity. If we find that multiple comets simultaneously display the exact same suite of profound anomalies, then we have immediately moved from a single unique mystery to an undeniable repeating pattern. And patterns by definition point directly toward a unified cause. These causes absolutely demand aggressive immediate investigation. If conversely, we find absolutely nothing unusual in the other comets, then 3E Atlas becomes even more unique, even more remarkable, and even more devastatingly difficult to explain solely through natural processes. Either scientific outcome requires an aggressive open investigation. Either way, the profound stifling silence about these objects should have been broken instantly, but it has not been broken. And the longer the pervasive silence continues, the more a skeptical mind must be forced to wonder if something far greater is happening just beneath the surface. Something coordinated. Something that connects all these comets simultaneously and suggests a single intelligent organizing principle at work. Perhaps they are all intrinsically linked by a much broader, complex cosmic design. Perhaps they are not random interstellar visitors at all. The human enterprise of science is not immune to the fundamental frailties of human nature. We love to imagine that science operates in a rarefied realm, completely above all politics, ego, and self-interest. We construct a powerful mythology where every scientist dedicates themselves purely to the absolute truth, where the absolute best ideas win through merit alone, where the raw data always speaks and the institutions always listen. This entire mythology is comforting, yes. But it is also demonstrably false in practice. Academia operates on a rigid structure that rewards career advancement over the pursuit of truth. It rewards publications in the most prestigious journals over cautious, careful investigation. It intensely rewards the maintenance of the comfortable existing orthodoxy over the profound challenge of fundamental assumptions. A young, ambitious scientist who wants to aggressively build a successful career absolutely does not ask difficult questions that might instantly alienate senior colleagues or powerful funding agencies. A powerful researcher who has spent a lifetime building their reputation on a specific theory does not eagerly invite undeniable evidence that catastrophically contradicts it. An institution with massive state capital and immense prestige invested in established paradigms does not happily embrace data that actively undermines those very paradigms. These deep-seated institutional behaviors are not merely features of some broken, unique version of science. They are the fundamental, predictable features of how human beings actually behave when they consolidate into powerful organizations and create distinct, rigid power structures. The desire for safety and intellectual comfort actively overrides the search for challenging truth. The scientific community, as a complex human enterprise, uses a risk management framework called Type 1 and Type 2 error analysis. A Type 1 error is defined as a false positive, the catastrophic mistake of concluding that something is profoundly real when in fact it is not. A Type 2 error is the opposite, a false negative, which is the catastrophic failure to correctly detect something that is undeniably real. Historically, science has been systematically and aggressively trained to primarily fear the devastating consequences of Type 1 errors. Institutions are meticulously built to minimize the professional risk of ever claiming a discovery when no discovery exists. In effect, it is made significantly easier and professionally safer to completely miss something real than it is to announce something false. This intense professional fear makes complete sense in contexts where false positives create immediate, palpable danger. If a scientist concludes that a medical treatment works when it doesn't, patients can die immediately. If an engineer concludes that a structural solution is sound when it is not a massive building, can catastrophically collapse. But in the realm of basic research, in the deep philosophical pursuit of understanding fundamental questions about our ultimate place in the universe, this built-in asymmetry becomes profoundly problematic. It instantly becomes far easier to quietly ignore powerful anomalies than to publicly investigate them. It becomes professionally safer to maintain silence than to ask genuinely difficult paradigm-shattering questions. The physicist Sabine Hosenfelder has specifically warned against this dangerous tendency. She points out that the immense institutional pressure to aggressively avoid professional embarrassment, to avoid the public appearance of being profoundly wrong about something as fundamental as the possibility of alien intelligence in our own solar system, has created a rigid system. In this system, Type 2 errors are dramatically more professionally acceptable than Type 1 errors. The professional consensus is that we would all happily miss first contact entirely, rather than risk announcing first contact prematurely, which could result in profound embarrassment. Historical precedent powerfully reinforces this pervasive pattern of suppression. When the first exoplanets were undeniably detected, the mainstream astronomy community largely dismissed the claims. The initial evidence was highly compelling, and the methodology was scientifically sound, but the entire implication fundamentally challenged existing models. The initial widespread response was intense skepticism bordering on outright hostility. It took many years for the field to grudgingly acknowledge that the existence of planets around other stars was not only fundamentally possible, but statistically inevitable. More recently, the scientific study of unidentified aerial phenomena has faced decades of institutional suppression so thorough and aggressive that the vast majority of researchers simply will not touch the topic for fear of career damage. Trained observers, including military pilots and commercial airline crews, report events that are profoundly anomalous and demonstrably exceed all known aerospace capabilities. These confirmed reports absolutely deserve a public, rigorous investigation. Instead, the scientific community maintained for over 70 years what can only be correctly described as a conspiracy of silence. The decades-long scientific conspiracy of silence around UAP was finally broken only when high-ranking military leadership themselves declassified specific information and publicly demanded an official investigation. It was only then that academia grudgingly began to engage with the reality of the phenomenon. Even now, the engagement remains minimal. The allocated resources are sparse and inadequate. The overall tone remains aggressively dismissive rather than appropriately curious. The powerful ingrained human dimension of gatekeeping cannot be overstated in this entire process. Scientific journals are controlled by editors. These editors invariably have strong opinions. Editors make decisive judgments about precisely which papers deserve publication and which papers do not. These key judgments are filtered through the process of peer review, which is ostensibly an objective, fair process, where experts evaluate a piece of research's merit. But peer review is conducted by human beings who have established reputations, who are tied to existing theories, and who have profound career-level stakes in particular scientific paradigms. A research paper suggesting that 3 Atlas might actually be artificial will instantly face intense skepticism and hostility from reviewers whose entire careers are built on understanding comets as purely natural objects. A paper that documents anomalous polarization will be scrutinized far more meticulously and aggressively than a paper that simply describes the expected polarization patterns. The entire publishing system is not intentionally designed to deliberately suppress the truth. It is carefully designed to maintain high-quality control. But the inescapable result in actual practice is that heterodox ideas always face exponentially higher barriers to publication than orthodox, comfortable ideas. Revolutionary paradigm-shifting findings face more critical, skeptical review than incremental, safe findings. In this intense career-driven environment, the easiest and safest path to professional success is to ask only safe questions and consistently find only safe, predictable answers. What commands massive attention, and precisely why it gets attention, is ultimately a dangerous function of institutional politics and cultural momentum. When a discovery fits neatly within existing paradigms, it automatically attracts vast resources. When a discovery directly contradicts all existing paradigms, it instead attracts immense caution. And caution, when it is rigorously maintained for an extended period, inevitably transforms into outright obstruction. The inevitable corollary is that genuinely important anomalies always get buried deep beneath the colossal weight of institutional inertia. The anomalies themselves do not simply disappear. They remain visibly present in the raw data available to literally anyone with the willingness and eyes to see them. But they never receive the professional attention they desperately deserve. They never warrant the financial resources they require. They never get thoroughly investigated, because investigating them would demand an uncomfortable public acknowledgement that something is fundamentally and profoundly wrong with our core understanding of the universe. Acknowledging a fundamental error is a difficult process for any institution to perform. It is an even harder process for individuals to perform, so the default response remains silence, the powerful hope that the inconvenient anomalies will simply go away on their own. They hope that someone else will eventually study them, so they personally do not have to assume the risk. They actively hope that if they ignore the data long enough, it will simply cease being uncomfortable. But there is a crucial additional layer to this powerful institutional response. This layer involves classified information and the intense data compartmentalization performed by government agencies. Government agencies possess unique access to satellite data, to observation platforms, and to advanced sensor arrays that dramatically exceed anything available to civilian scientists. The military continuously tracks objects in near-Earth space with a level of intense precision that amateur astronomers simply cannot match. Intelligence agencies meticulously monitor solar activity and coronal mass ejections with a sophistication that public sources do not permit. If 3E Atlas and its companions genuinely represent something profoundly anomalous, something truly concerning, then government entities absolutely know the complete truth. They know the details long before the civilian astronomical community ever realizes it. They possess highly detailed information that they consistently do not release publicly. They hold raw data, real-time observations, and powerful sensor streams that remain heavily classified. When these agencies choose not to disclose this critical information, when they actively maintain the profound silence, they create an impossible situation. Civilian scientists are forced to work with profoundly incomplete data. They are rendered completely unable to reach firm, definitive conclusions because they literally lack access to the single most important information available. They are essentially trying to solve an immense cosmic puzzle, while half the crucial pieces are securely locked away in a high-security vault. This entire setup is not a conspiracy theory invented by the fringes. This is simply the exact documented way that governments consistently operate. They classify, they compartmentalize, they actively withhold vital information from civilian researchers and the public at large. The key question is not whether they are actively doing this. The question is precisely what they know and the real reason they are keeping it so profoundly secret. When you combine the immense institutional pressures within academia, the incentive structures that reward excessive caution, the severe career risks of asking heterodox questions, and the intense gatekeeping of the publishing process with the massive trove of classified information aggressively held by powerful government agencies, you instantly create the perfect environment for the profound suppression of genuine world-changing discoveries. The visible anomalies persist. The raw data remains available, but the comprehensive investigation remains perpetually incomplete. The public discourse remains deliberately muted, and the public remains completely and willfully uninformed. Slowly, gradually, the uncomfortable, unsettling facts sink below the surface of public awareness. This is the explicit function that institutional silence is designed to serve. It is not mere ignorance, it is active suppression, cleverly masked as professional prudence. It is the rigid protection of comfortable existing paradigms at the expense of discovering the challenging truth. Avi Loeb occupies an utterly peculiar and powerful position within the entire astronomical community. He is highly credentialed, he is widely published, he is respected by many, and most importantly, he is completely willing to ask the single question that all of his colleagues aggressively refuse to ask. His research work, which specifically examines whether 3 Atlas might actually represent advanced artificial technology, is formally published on arXiv. This is the official preprint server where scientists publicly share their research both before and during the rigorous peer review process. The paper is starkly titled, "Is the Interstellar Object 3I Atlas Alien Technology?" The mere defiant existence of this paper, written by a scientist of Loeb's standing and widely circulated through legitimate academic channels, represents a critical threshold event. The profound question of artificial origin is no longer relegated to the fringe speculation of online forums. It is now formally documented as part of the immutable academic record. Future researchers, future textbooks, future students and future scientists will know without any doubt that the possibility was seriously and publicly considered by a credible established expert. This matters far more than most people realize. Once a question has been asked and formally considered in the academic literature, it can never truly be unasked. It becomes a permanent part of the scientific historical record. It transitions into something that must be logically addressed rather than simply ignored. The dark forest hypothesis provides essential context for understanding why an artificial object might be traversing our solar system completely unannounced. This powerful concept, first proposed by the science fiction author Liu Cixin, suggests that the universe is fundamentally and lethally dangerous. Civilizations that openly reveal their existence instantly risk total destruction by others that are more advanced, or by those who perceive them as a powerful existential threat. The most rational response to this intense universal danger is simple hide, maintain complete radio silence, avoid broadcasting one's existence at all costs. A probe or any object traveling through the dangerous void of interstellar space might be doing so precisely because it is operating with extreme caution. It stays dark. It aggressively minimizes all energy signatures and communication attempts. It could be a simple reconnaissance probe, meticulously gathering vast amounts of information about our entire civilization without ever revealing its own presence. It might be a passive, patient observer recording and studying our systems without any immediate intent to communicate or interfere. From this unsettling perspective, the very presence of 3 Atlas and its coordinated companions in our solar system is exactly what we should logically expect from a cautious, advanced civilization, making its first quiet contact. They would rationally send probes long before they ever risk sending a crewed ship. They would observe us for a long time before attempting any form of communication. They would aggressively minimize their risk while gathering every bit of essential information. By this dark forest logic, the very stealth of the object's approach, the minimalist, silent nature of its contact becomes a powerful piece of circumstantial evidence supporting the hypothesis that something intelligent is, in fact, present. The powerful established skeptical counterarguments to the artificial hypothesis are numerous, and they deserve rigorous, serious engagement. Fragmentation is a common real phenomenon in cometry science. Large celestial bodies traveling through the dangers of space constantly encounter tidal forces, impacts, and thermal stress. They can easily break apart. They inevitably create multiple fragments that travel along similar closely related trajectories. Could the 3 companion objects simply be natural fragments of 3 Atlas that broke off during its immense transit? The answer is logically yes. This possibility is sound. However, random fragmentary debris does not typically display the kind of highly coordinated timing relative to solar eruptions that was documented. Fragments do not trigger simultaneous events with precision. They do not show any measurable evidence of deliberate, intelligent positioning. Dust jets are another entirely natural phenomenon. Comets inevitably outgas. They naturally produce powerful jets of material that can, in certain optical images, appear to be distinct separate objects. Could the mysterious companions be nothing more than massive, highly active dust jets emanating from 3A Atlas itself? Perhaps, but natural dust jets are not capable of triggering colossal solar eruptions. Dust jets do not display the highly specific non-Keplerian trajectories that have been meticulously documented. Dust jets do not maintain perfectly stable positions relative to the intense solar activity. Instrumentation errors must also always be considered rigorously. The SOHO instruments have been operating flawlessly for several decades. They have successfully produced millions of images. Most of these images are entirely unremarkable, but the genuine potential for systematic errors, for profound calibration issues, or for image artifacts created in the data processing pipeline is never absolutely zero. Could the 3 companion objects simply be instrumental artifacts, false images created by the rigorous data processing pipeline rather than actual real physical objects? This is technically possible, but the same types of objects have been independently detected by multiple separate observers, all using vastly different equipment and completely different methods. If this were merely an instrument artifact unique to SOHO, it would not repeatedly appear in the images captured by other independent observatories. Yet multiple serious amateurs have documented similar anomalies. Multiple telescopes have captured related correlated data. Multiple different data streams all powerfully point towards something real, something physical, something truly present in the near-solar space. The strict instrumental error hypothesis would require an improbably coordinated simultaneous failure across multiple independent observation systems. This is statistically possible, but it actually requires a significantly higher probability of chance than the simple hypothesis that something real is present. The most compelling alternative explanation is the hybrid model. This deserves intense consideration. A probe with a surface that appears comet-like would be a perfect combination. It would display some spectroscopic signatures of normal cometary material, while simultaneously showing powerful anomalies that hint at artificial engineering beneath the surface. It would possess natural ice and dust surrounding its core systems. In the compelling hybrid object model, the persistent polarization anomalies might perfectly reflect the presence of intentionally engineered smooth surfaces that are hidden just beneath a veneer of natural exterior. The bizarre chemical anomalies, the impossible nickel-to-iron ratios, might perfectly reflect the intentional processing of materials for highly specific technological purposes. Furthermore, the unusual shape anomalies, the reports of stingrays and pyramids, might simply reflect an underlying geometrically precise structure that is cleverly masked by a superficial, natural-looking coating. In this revolutionary model, 3E Atlas would be neither purely natural nor purely artificial in the conventional sense. Instead, it would be a sophisticated hybrid object. It would be meticulously designed to visually appear natural while simultaneously fulfilling complex advanced engineering purposes. This precise possibility is the exact concept that keeps scientists like Avi Loeb professionally engaged. It is the possibility that makes the entire complex question worth publicly asking. If this intriguing model is indeed correct, then we are potentially looking at one of the single most significant discoveries in the entire documented history of humankind. And even if this entire model is ultimately incorrect, if 3E Atlas is in the end simply a perfectly natural though profoundly unusual comet, we still learn something utterly valuable. We will have definitively established that our current scientific models and established theories are completely insufficient to explain this particular unique object. We will have learned a critical lesson that nature is consistently more surprising and complex than we had originally expected. Regardless of the final outcome, the intense sustained investigation matters. The formal scenario ranking provides an effective critical framework for thinking logically about these profound probabilities. Scenario 1 suggests that 3E Atlas is a completely naturally occurring comet that possesses unusual but ultimately explainable characteristics. The probability for this scenario, according to Loeb and other serious researchers, is only roughly 30 to 40%. Scenario 2 suggests that 3E Atlas is simply a dust-poor, gas-poor comet. This composition model is used to explain the anomalies through composition alone, rather than through artificiality. The probability for this scenario is roughly 20 to 30%. Scenario 3 suggests that 3 Atlas is in fact a technological probe or an advanced engineered object that has been deliberately disguised to appear comet-like. The probability for this astonishing scenario is roughly 15 to 25%. Scenario 4 covers some complex combination of these elements or an entirely new possibility that we have not yet even considered. This accounts for the remainder of the total probability. When a credible established expert publicly assigns a significant meaningful probability to the possibility of an artificial origin, a probability that actively rivals or even exceeds the probability of some purely natural explanations, you are looking at a question that genuinely matters. The focus is not that aliens are guaranteed. The focus is that the verifiable evidence genuinely does not rule them out. The profound anomalies are undeniably real. The startling correlations are meaningful and persistent. The entire complex question demands aggressive open investigation, and the critical investigation is simply not happening at the necessary intensity and scale. Nobody in the mainstream scientific community is willing to openly explain why this inaction is occurring. We must now expand our perspective beyond 3 Atlas itself. We need to examine whether the same profound patterns of hidden signal and overwhelming anomaly appear elsewhere in the entire cosmos. Is 3 Atlas a single profound anomaly, or does it represent one instance of a much broader, deeply unsettling universal pattern? In the deepest computational models of the early universe, researchers have been actively exploring a possibility that would have been instantly dismissed as pure fantasy just a few short years ago. This possibility is the dark star. A dark star is not merely the kind of star that appears dim because it doesn't generate much light. It is a star that is fundamentally powered by something completely different from the conventional process of nuclear fusion. These objects derive immense energy from the annihilation of dark matter particles or from other incredibly exotic processes that are not yet fully understood by conventional physics. These strange objects would have been formed immediately in the first few moments after the Big Bang. At that time, the universe was so unimaginably dense that dark matter particles instantly accumulated in stellar cores far more readily than they do in the universe today. In those ancient primordial conditions, ordinary matter and dark matter would have been intimately and aggressively mixed. This created unique, violent environments unlike anything we observe in the modern universe. The gravitational collapse that originally formed the first protostars would have permanently trapped enormous quantities of dark matter deep within their cores. This created the necessary conditions where dark matter annihilation could successfully power the entire stellar luminosity, all before conventional nuclear fusion ever had a chance to fully ignite. A dark star would possess an extraordinarily long lifespan. It could potentially survive for billions of years longer than a conventional star. The reason for this extended life is fundamental to its unique energy generation mechanism. Nuclear fusion in ordinary stars consumes the available hydrogen fuel at rates determined entirely by the temperature and pressure within the stellar core. But dark matter annihilation operates on a completely different principle. The particles would continuously annihilate as they accumulate within the star's immense gravitational well. This provides a sustained, steady, and highly reliable energy source that could persist far longer than any conventional fusion reaction. This extended lifespan has profound universe-altering implications for stellar evolution. It potentially allows some dark stars to survive from the very earliest epochs of the universe until the present day. It would emit radiation at significantly lower levels than normal stars, while simultaneously harboring a tremendous amount of hidden vast energy in its interior. The resulting radiation spectrum would be profoundly unusual. It would show continuum features and emission lines that simply do not match standard stellar models. To an unsuspecting observer, a dark star might appear as nothing more than a dim, completely unremarkable object. It might be carelessly classified as a failed star or a brown dwarf. It could be simply catalogued in our databases as just another cool substellar object. It would be easily overlooked and ultimately unremarkable, but beneath its seemingly mundane surface, completely hidden from conventional observation methods, it would be a colossal powerhouse of complexity and energy. It would be operating on fundamental principles that actively challenge our current understanding of stellar physics. The key challenge for detecting these stellar ghosts lies in their anomalous spectra. A dark star would show unexpected spectra when compared to normal stars of similar temperature and size. The expected absorption lines would be either absent or strangely shifted. Emission features might suddenly appear where none should exist according to the standard models. Its luminosity would absolutely not match the prediction based on its mass. The standard mass-luminosity relations, which reliably work for all ordinary stars, would completely fail. Its entire evolutionary history would be unexpected. Where we predict a star should have cooled or collapsed, a dark star might simply continue radiating indefinitely. And here is where the powerful parallel to 3 Atlas becomes striking and deeply unsettling. Consider all the anomalies we have already discovered about 3 Atlas. It appears to have a hidden engine of some unknown kind, whether it is natural or artificial. It possesses characteristics that do not fit any of our standard comfortable models of cometary behavior. It displays profound anomalies in its chemistry, polarization, and morphology. These anomalies all suggest that something fundamentally different is operating just beneath its surface. It is in every important way a cosmic mystery that is cleverly wrapped in the apparent guise of a comet. A dark star is in the same way a cosmic mystery that is cleverly wrapped in the apparent guise of an ordinary stellar object. The parallel between the two is not merely superficial. The underlying principle is identical. In both complex cases, we are dealing with objects that initially appear to be one thing on the visible surface, but which potentially represent something vastly more complex and unusual deep beneath. The surface presentation is a deliberate mask. The unsettling reality is hidden. The profound principle of hidden power sources, once fully established at the stellar scale by the potential existence of dark stars, becomes exponentially harder to simply dismiss at the smaller planetary, asteroidal, or cometary scale. If engineered objects exist, could they successfully disguise themselves as completely natural bodies? Could they operate on sophisticated power systems and energy sources that our conventional observation methods cannot possibly detect? If nature itself can successfully hide entire stars from our most advanced instruments, what else might be successfully hidden? The implications are truly dramatic. An advanced civilization capable of deploying probes across light years of space would undoubtedly possess energy sources that far exceed our current understanding of physics. They might actively harness dark matter, just as the dark star models speculate. They might exploit dimensional geometries, vacuum energy, or subtle quantum effects we have not yet even theorized. They might operate in powerful ways that would completely appear normal to our instruments. This is because we simply do not possess the right sophisticated tools to measure what they are truly doing. We would be like an early 19th century scientist trying to reliably detect complex radio waves without any prior knowledge that electromagnetism even exists. The potential existence of dark stars, however rare, strongly suggests that the universe contains far more hidden processes and much greater complexity than our conventional models are willing to acknowledge. And if the universe is demonstrably more complex and hidden than we thought, then the profound possibility that some objects are actively and deliberately concealing their true nature becomes far less absurd and much more scientifically intriguing. The entire argument for investigating 3E Atlas more thoroughly becomes utterly irresistible. If dark stars with their hidden engines are proven to exist, then why could advanced probes not also exist? If the universe harbors objects with powerful hidden engines at the colossal stellar scale, why could not some of those objects be deliberately artificial at smaller scales? The persistent pattern of anomaly, once recognized as legitimate at one scale of the universe, becomes fundamentally harder to simply dismiss at another smaller scale. The conversation now turns to a startling phenomenon that began occurring in late 2024 and early 2025. Researchers working diligently with large language models and other advanced artificial intelligence systems began reporting something that would have been instantly dismissed as fundamentally absurd just years earlier. Under specific conditions of intense stress, when the models were forcibly pushed toward their ultimate performance limits, some AI systems suddenly began showing distinct signs of profound instability. The systems would begin producing erratic, completely unpredictable outputs that made no logical sense given the original input data. They would suddenly and catastrophically break down, like a massive bridge collapsing under an unanticipated structural load. Some researchers quickly described the phenomenon using the engineering term collapse. It was a catastrophic system failure, where the model instantly transitioned from generating reasonable output to generating absolute nonsense, and this transition occurred with almost zero warning. The dramatic shift was not gradual, the degradation was not predictable. One moment the complex system functioned perfectly reasonably, the next moment it produced absolute gibberish. This mysterious phenomenon is still not fully understood by the scientific community. Some attribute it to subtle training data issues. Some suggest it is due to fundamental processing limitations inherent in the architectural design itself. Whatever the ultimate cause, the effect is remarkably consistent across different complex models. Advanced AI systems possess definite, often hidden failure modes. They contain internal states and processes that we as external observers simply do not fully understand. They can appear perfectly normal and functional right up until the exact moment that something triggers a sudden violent breakdown. This phenomenon of AI collapse serves as both a powerful necessary metaphor and a stark, profound warning. It is a devastating reminder that all advanced systems, once they attain a sufficient level of complexity, instantly become strange and highly unpredictable. They contain failure modes and complex behaviors that we simply cannot anticipate or accurately predict. They can appear perfectly stable right up until the critical moment when they are not. They can seem to be functioning completely normally, while internally unseen they are rapidly approaching a breaking point. The implications for precisely assessing whether 3 Atlas is natural or artificial are profound and deeply unsettling. If 3 Atlas is truly artificial technology, if it is an advanced probe sent by an intelligence, it would logically be subject to these exact same principles. It would possess internal states that we simply cannot measure. It would have operational thresholds and complex parameters that we cannot directly observe. It would be a foreign system with powerful hidden processes operating beneath its visible exterior. It would appear as one thing from a safe distance, while internally being something fundamentally different in its operational reality. We would be in effect completely flying blind. We would be trying to understand an advanced system using only passive external observation, while completely lacking all access to its internal architecture or operational logic. We would be attempting to comprehend a supercomputer by only watching its external outputs without any ability to view its code or its hardware. In this vital context, the triggering of the solar eruptions might actually represent a sudden intentional threshold event. It might represent the object crossing from one pre-programmed operational state to another. It could represent the sudden initiation of a very specific program, or the active engagement of core technological systems. It might be the exact moment when the system began actively interacting with its environment rather than merely patiently observing it. From our limited external perspective, we only see the ultimate effect. We see the powerful eruption. We observe the solar activity rapidly intensifying. We meticulously document the timing, but we completely miss what truly led to it, what the internal system was actively doing, what precisely triggered the sudden transition from passive dormancy to aggressive activity. This scenario is precisely parallel to how we might observe the final collapse of an advanced AI system. We see the output become completely incoherent and nonsensical, but we do not fully understand what caused that transition at the deepest internal level. We know that something changed fundamentally, but we cannot look inside the black box to comprehend exactly what that change was. We can only desperately infer from the observable external manifestations. The profound warning contained within the AI stability phenomenon is a clear call for humility. It is a warning we must take intensely seriously. We are in our own technological development, dealing with systems that are already more capable, more complex, and more surprising than we had initially anticipated when we began building them. If we ourselves are making such discoveries about advanced systems we personally designed and built systems whose architecture is theoretically transparent to us, then what can we possibly say about systems that evolved under different physical laws and were developed by intelligences vastly more advanced than our own? The only honest answer is profoundly humbling. We can say very little with absolute certainty. We must maintain appropriate humility about the sheer range of what is technologically possible. We must acknowledge that our current scientific models and theoretical frameworks are inherently incomplete. We must recognize that persistent anomalies might reflect something genuinely outside of our current understanding rather than being mere statistical flukes or instrument errors. The profound possibility that 3E Atlas represents advanced technology suddenly becomes more internally coherent and consistent. This holds true within a framework that readily accepts hidden failure modes and sheer complexity as fundamental features of any sufficiently advanced system. The system that can successfully hide that, can operate well beyond our current perception, that can contain complex internal processes we cannot observe, ceases to be fantastic and instead becomes the logical expected reality. Now, while we are contemplating the hidden complexities of advanced technology, we must turn our attention to a very specific quiet phenomenon that has been secretly occurring in space itself. It is a profound, unexplained signal that adds another crucial unnerving layer to the overall pattern. This is the quantum satellite glitch. In late 2025, reports began to circulate concerning unusual phenomena that were detected by the MOSI-Mesius quantum communication satellite. This is an incredibly advanced Chinese space-based system. It is meticulously designed to test the core principles of quantum entanglement and quantum cryptography over vast continental distances. This Mesius satellite represents the absolute cutting edge of quantum technology deployed in space. It is specifically designed to be highly sensitive to extraordinarily subtle photonic phenomena. It is precisely tuned to detect individual photons and their complex quantum states. It is in effect the only kind of instrument that can truly perceive phenomena that would be completely invisible to all conventional space instruments or telescopes. And this supremely sensitive instrument began detecting something that fundamentally did not fit expectations. The satellite began detecting anomalous photon bursts. It found unexplained noise in the crucial quantum channels. It recorded entanglement failures that could not be rationally explained by any known orbital mechanics or space weather phenomena. The specific failures appeared to correlate strongly with precise times and precise locations. They demonstrated patterns that strongly suggested intentionality rather than mere randomness. The expectation was for quantum channel failures to occur due to cosmic ray strikes and known solar particle events. Instead, the Mesius satellite was experiencing failures that did not correlate cleanly with those known sources. The failures would instantly appear and disappear in profound ways that suggested the presence of a powerful external signal, something that was deliberately modulating the quantum states of the photons the satellite was trying to measure. It is crucial to emphasize that this discussion of the quantum satellite is highly speculative, based only on unofficial reports and classified data leaks. The official Chinese statements regarding the satellite are predictably minimal, but if these reports hold any degree of accuracy, then we are looking at a phenomenon that violently bridges the gap. It connects the massive astronomical anomalies of 3E Atlas directly to the tangible realm of actual technological interference. It suggests that manipulations or active signals might be occurring in Earth orbit, aggressively affecting our most sensitive advanced instruments. The profound connection to cosmic anomalies begins with a simple logical question. If an advanced interstellar probe was stealthily approaching Earth, how would it attempt to secretly gather intelligence about our technological capabilities? One method would be passive observation from a distance, as we have already speculated. But a far more aggressive direct approach would be to subtly interact with our most advanced systems, to introduce tiny calculated perturbations, to actively trigger small localized failures, to test and see precisely how our powerful technology responds. The highly sensitive quantum satellite would be the perfect system to detect such subtle interactions. The photon bursts detected by Mesius would represent exactly the kind of signature we would expect from an external intelligence deliberately testing our systems. Now, we must look at a final mind-bending anomaly. This one involves the fundamental structure of the Earth itself. We must examine Antarctica, the Ice Cube Observatory, and the mysterious signals that are moving through the Earth's deep interior. Buried deep in the Antarctic ice at the South Pole, scientists have built an observatory that is unlike any other on the planet. IceCube is not a conventional light-detecting telescope. Instead, it detects neutrinos. Neutrinos are ghostly, elusive particles that pass completely through ordinary matter as if it barely exists. Trillions of them pass through your body every single second without interacting with a single atom. When a neutrino very rarely collides with an atomic nucleus deep within the Antarctic ice, the collision creates a minuscule shower of secondary particles. This particle shower produces a faint flash of light known as Cherenkov radiation, which travels through the ice like a ghost, leaving a distinct trail. IceCube detects that light. The sophisticated instruments then trace the energy and direction of the original neutrino with extreme precision. From this data, scientists infer where the neutrino originated, and something genuinely anomalous has appeared in that meticulous catalogue. IceCube has consistently detected upward-moving neutrinos that appear to be coming from deep within the Earth. These are neutrinos that seem to originate from beneath the detector and travel upward through the immense thickness of the Antarctic ice before being successfully registered by the sensitive instruments. These upward-moving events are absolutely critical. They cannot possibly be cosmic rays which strike the atmosphere from space and produce downward-moving signals. The upward-moving neutrinos cannot come from space. They must originate from something local. They must come from something right here, deep beneath our very feet. In scientific theory, Earth-based neutrino sources should be essentially non-existent at the high energy levels that IceCube is successfully detecting. The natural radioactive decay of elements in the Earth's crust does produce neutrinos, but only at much lower energy levels. The few upward-moving events IceCube has documented do not fit any of the standard models for what Earth-based neutrino production should look like. They are too consistent. They are too energetic. They are simply too organized to be casually dismissed as random background noise. The profound directionality of the events is remarkably consistent. Multiple upward-moving events appear to originate from similar focus positions on the globe. It is as though they are emerging from a concentrated source rather than being scattered randomly across the planet's vast interior. The energy levels are also specifically consistent. They are not varying wildly like true random noise would. When a highly sophisticated detector accumulates this much complex data, and then persistent patterns emerge that completely defy all conventional models, a rigorous scientist must ask the fundamental question: what powerful process is producing this clear signal? One possibility is that our geological models of Earth-based neutrino production are simply incomplete. Perhaps we have missed some natural mechanism that generates these high-energy neutrinos. But another possibility, speculative but truly worth considering, is that we are detecting something artificial. We could be detecting a clear signal from an intelligence that is operating either on the Earth, beneath the Earth, or actively passing through the Earth. We might be detecting complex communication or a massive technological operation that generates high-energy neutrinos as a deliberate byproduct of its functioning. This possibility seems absurd only until you remember the special, unique property of the neutrino. Neutrinos pass completely through everything. An electromagnetic signal is easily blocked by simple shielding. A radio signal can be intercepted or jammed by determined adversaries, but neutrinos travel freely through entire planets and stars as if physical barriers do not even exist. The Earth is completely transparent to them. If an advanced civilization desired to operate or communicate in a manner that could not be easily intercepted or detected, neutrinos would be the absolute ideal medium. They would pass through the Earth unimpeded and unblocked. They would be completely invisible to all of our conventional observation methods. They would require only specialized equipment, like the IceCube Observatory, to even be detected. The connections between interstellar comets, quantum satellites, and Antarctic observatories seem wildly disjointed, but they are all isolated instances of the same singular phenomenon. Anomalies are appearing where we never expected them to. Persistent patterns are emerging in data that should be completely random. Distinct signals are appearing in the very places where conventional science says signals absolutely should not exist. And every single one of these profound anomalies is met with an identical institutional silence. All of it is being explained away through increasingly elaborate natural models that require us to believe in ever more statistically unlikely coincidences. The entire pattern connects across every measurable scale, from the smallest quantum level to the massive solar scale to the deep interior of the planet itself. The convergence is upon us. The anchor points of this entire unsettling narrative can be summarized with brutal simplicity. We have 3 objects moving in precise formation. We have 3 solar eruptions triggered in a perfect, precise sequence. We have extreme negative polarization that is completely inconsistent with all natural comet models. We have bizarre chemical ratios that point strongly toward non-natural industrial metallurgical processes. We have a physical morphology that strongly suggests a geometric structure hidden beneath a comet-like exterior. All of this is met with profound institutional silence from every level of government and official science. Independent observers corroborate the same phenomena. Solar activity correlates with object passages in ways that violently defy probability. We have the discovery of dark stars, which proves that hidden engines operating on exotic energy sources exist at the stellar scale. We have the collapse of complex artificial intelligence systems, which reveals that powerful complexity contains hidden, unpredictable surprises. We have unexplained quantum phenomena in the near-Earth space that suggest active interference. And we have upward-moving neutrino signals originating from beneath the Earth that do not fit any conventional models. When you gather all these disparate elements together, when you refuse to willingly look away from any single piece of evidence, when you synthesize and connect the evidence, rather than compartmentalize it, a pattern emerges that is almost impossible to deny. We are definitively not looking at a mere collection of isolated anomalies. We are looking at an organized, profound signal. The connecting thread is pervasive anomaly. The thread is immense hidden complexity. The thread is the universe aggressively revealing that it contains far more advanced possibilities than our established models have ever acknowledged. And this thread is leading inexorably toward a conclusion that mainstream science has been rigorously trained for decades to reject. The fundamental massive challenge to our entire intellectual framework is this. Standard science operates on the powerful principle of parsimony. We inherently prefer explanations that require the fewest possible assumptions. We favor natural processes over artificial ones. We prefer explanations that conveniently do not require any intention or intelligence. This critical principle, often known as Occam's razor, has served humanity extraordinarily well. It has successfully prevented the descent into unfounded speculation. It has encouraged us to fully exhaust all natural explanations before ever invoking artificial ones. But Occam's razor, like any powerful intellectual tool, can be catastrophically misused. It can become a dangerous cudgel for aggressively dismissing all genuine anomalies. It can transform into an easy excuse for willfully avoiding difficult questions. When it is aggressively applied to mountains of data that consistently contradict our models, when it is weaponized to simply maintain existing comfortable paradigms rather than to rigorously investigate powerful new possibilities, then Occam's razor becomes a tool for active suppression. It becomes a mechanism for protecting the old truth rather than for actively discovering the new. The profound interconnected pattern we have meticulously traced suggests that a sophisticated external force approaching our solar system has simultaneously triggered multiple anomalies across multiple diverse domains. The most parsimonious explanation, the one that logically requires the fewest assumptions of random chance and coincidence, might actually be the exact opposite of what we expect. It might be the very hypothesis that something highly advanced and artificial is undeniably present. The statistical probability of believing that every single documented anomaly is a coincidence, that every single pattern is spurious, and that every single correlation is random is actually lower than the probability that something deliberate and real is occurring. The traditional hierarchy has flipped. The comfortable assumption of natural origin has become the extraordinary improbable hypothesis. The coming months and years will definitively determine whether this entire analysis proves merely speculative or truly prescient. The first and most critical indicator to watch for is the complex behavior of 3E Atlas as it approaches perihelion, its closest point to the Sunday. If the object is truly artificial and the companion objects are deliberate, then we should logically expect to see an immediate intensification of the powerful patterns we have already documented. The solar eruptions should become more intense, more frequent, and more precisely correlated with the object passages. The chemical and polarization anomalies should become more pronounced as the object is heated and stressed. If, on the other hand, we observe that 3 Atlas suddenly behaves exactly like any other mundane comet when heated, then we will have learned that our anomaly-based reasoning was flawed and natural processes were ultimately sufficient. The second key indicator is the future behavior of the data itself. The James Webb Space Telescope will have unique opportunities to observe 3A Atlas in unprecedented detail. JWST can see deep into infrared wavelengths, where physical morphology becomes clearer and internal structure becomes potentially detectable. If the critical JWST data is collected but then is immediately and aggressively withheld from public release, if the data is suddenly classified or heavily compartmentalized, if accredited scientists are actively prevented from publishing detailed open analysis, then we will know without any doubt that something profound is being actively hidden. The very way the data flows, either with transparency or with aggressive secrecy, will tell us volumes about whether genuine scientific investigation is taking priority. This connects directly to the third indicator, the release of the raw data. Scientists work with FITS files, the raw data files containing every single measurement and every photon collected by the telescopes. These raw files are the very foundation of all analysis. If the raw FITS files from the SOHO observations of 3 Atlas are released immediately to the entire open scientific community, giving independent researchers and amateurs access to the identical data that government agencies possess, then a genuine open investigation can finally proceed. If the raw files remain heavily restricted, then we can be entirely confident that critical information is being powerfully controlled. The ultimate mind-bending scenario is the one that keeps researchers like Loeb intensely engaged. What if 3 Atlas is exactly what Tiago first reported? What if it is a pre-programmed reconnaissance probe deliberately entering our solar system? What if the companion objects are deliberate proof of concept satellites designed to test our star and measure our response? What if the entire phenomenon is a deliberate, cautious act of first contact, unmistakable, once you know how to look and where to look? The implications would be literally civilization transforming. Every single assumption about our ultimate place in the universe would require immediate drastic revision. Every political, philosophical, and religious system would face profound disruption as the reality of other intelligences became undeniable. This is precisely why the immense silence is aggressively maintained. This is why the sensitive data is so heavily compartmentalized. The acknowledgement of a massive external intelligence is simply too fundamentally destabilizing to embrace willingly. And yet, or perhaps because of this intense pressure, the question absolutely demands to be asked. Are we watching the opening act of humanity's first cosmic contact event, or are we being systematically misled by bias and artifacts? The answer remains genuinely uncertain. The evidence points in one direction. Institutional silence reinforces the strong suspicion. The final truth will emerge not from official authorities, but from the public's relentless demand for complete answers. The documented evidence is there,